In our weekly international feature with Al Jazeera's correspondent Hoda Abdel Hamid, we go to Syria, where the war continues to claim lives and subject Syrians to a life of starvation and sickness. The United Nations reports this week that 15 displaced Syrian children, 13 of them aged under 1, have died in recent weeks due to cold weather and inadequate medical care. Donald Trump also wants to withdraw about 2,000 US soldiers from the war. And the man responsible for thousands of deaths there, Bashar al-Assad, remains untouchable. Hoda Abdel Hamid joins me now on Skype from Doha in Qatar. Hello, Hoda. Hoda, let's kick off with the violence that we've seen against US soldiers in Manbij, which is a Kurdish-controlled area. What happened there and what's the message?
I think the message is that the ISIS or ISIL or the Islamic State is still there and able to carry out attacks and to cause havoc. It's probably not able to gain such vast amount of territory like it did in the past when it announced the caliphate, but it's certainly able to regroup at least in small numbers and carry out attacks and hurt, basically.
Okay, and at the same time, the US is considering withdrawing. I mean, what sort of impact is that likely to have on stability going forward?
Well, that's a big question. And also, the first question is actually, when will the US withdraw? We heard President Trump announce that a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed that that would have been quite imminent. And then just after that, if you remember dramatically, the Defense Secretary Mattis had resigned because he didn't agree with pulling out the troops there. Now, when that will happen, we don't know, but certainly the Kurds are not happy. They feel that they are going to be abandoned, and that would actually leave a vacuum for the Islamic State to regroup, or actually even for the government troops to take over those territories that are now in control of the Kurds. And don't forget, you have another neighbor, Turkey, that is not very happy and does not want to have any vast amount of territory inside Syria under control of the Kurds, because it's afraid of the repercussions inside Turkey itself. So it is a very complicated situation. If U.S. troops pull out, it will certainly be a big problem, and it will certainly probably increase the instability, because, yes, the Kurds are the ones who did the fight on the ground, but they had air cover, they had a sort of training and support and logistical support by U.S. troops, and nobody knows what they can do. And it is an extremely complicated situation, and many are fearing that if the U.S. actually pulls out so upstream, and then people are afraid that war will come all the way back to their doorstep.
Because it's not only ISIL that they've been fighting. I mean, there's certain rebel groups still on the ground that Bashar al-Assad is out to get. As you say, it's a complex situation. There's so many players. It's a real proxy war, isn't it? I mean, who's coming out the victor here other than Assad and Russia and Iran?
Well, I mean, I think it's too early to talk about any kind of victory. And in the end, yes, certainly the government has retaken most of the Syrian territories on its control. But to talk about victory, I think the government even can't really claim that, because at what cost? You have a huge amount of cities and towns that are completely destroyed, uninhabitable. You have 6 million refugees abroad. You have people displaced. It's an extremely complex situation. And as you said, there are so many international players now inside Syria, each vying for their own interests. So at a certain point, this is a torn country that is sort of held together somehow by the will of the international community, but what happens inside is far from being something that will bring together that country anytime soon.
And where does this leave the opposition? I mean, Bashar al-Assad is accused of using starvation as a war technique, using chemical weapons against his own people. So you wonder how you ever recover from something like that, or ever reconcile.
Well, I think it would be very difficult, because you do have a lot of people who had been harmed in this war who would tell you that they don't want to live under the government of Bashar Assad simply because of what happened in their street, in their home, or in their village. So it's very complicated. And when you say who is the opposition, it actually depends who you talk to. You have the opposition that used to go to Geneva, that used to be a part of this sort of UN-sponsored peace talks that actually never led to anything. And then you have another opposition that went to the so-called Astana talks. That those were sponsored by Turkey, Iran, and Syria. And both of these opposition groups are not friends, and both accuse the other of not representing the Syrian people. So it is. So at a certain point, you do also wonder who are you going to talk to actually put a real end to this war and have all parties involved agree on something. At the moment, everything is so fractured, even the peace talks are fractured. It's very difficult to see how that will happen anytime soon.
So Donald Trump wants to pull out the troops. Many say that Barack Obama should have gone in when his own red line was crossed after a chemical weapon attack. Do you think, from what you've seen in your experience there, that he did the wrong thing by not going in harder?
Well, you do have two sides of the argument. Certainly, it was a big blow to, I would say, the prestige of the U.S. because he had clearly said it was a red line, and that red line was crossed, and nothing happened, and that did embolden a sector of the that did embolden the government, I would say.
And Hoda, I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off because we've run out of time. That's the end of the show. Hoda Abdel Hamid, thank you very much. And that's our show for tonight. News is next.